Of course, her ex-boyfriend would give her help from time to time, hoping that she could help them collect some information from the Xiangqing base. However, the crystal cores sent by her ex-boyfriend were not enough for Zhang Chuchu to spend. God knows how many crystal cores she has to consume in a month to satisfy her vain material needs. So Zhang Chuchu had no choice but to go back to her old job. It just so happened that Chu Xing needed help again, so Zhang Chuchu hooked up with this desperado. Only these few desperate criminals dared to attack Hua Mi and Gong Yi's children. Zhang Chuchu now only hopes that the three men can get rid of Boss Gong and Qin Jinqiang as soon as possible, but she has been waiting for almost half an hour, and the three men have not come out of the mutant forest, and Boss Gong and Qin Jinqiang's two children have not come out either. What on earth had happened? Zhang Chuchu didn't dare to go into the forest to see what was happening. She was afraid that she would be eaten by the mutant plants if she went in.
Neat.
When the ex-boyfriend's voice sounded, Zhang Chuchu turned her head with surprise and saw Chu Xing walking over with her ex-boyfriend, followed by 4 or 5 men. Zhang Chuchu ran over, and Chu Xing asked, "Have Gong Yi-sun and Qin Jinqiang been dealt with?" Zhang Chuchu nodded. Since he hadn't come out for such a long time, the problem must have been solved. "You also found a few helpers. Where did they go?" Chu Xing looked around and saw that there was only one car, and Zhang Chuchu left next to the large mutant forest, as well as Hua Xiaoning, who was playing quietly in the car. Zhang Chuchu hesitated and said, "Maybe it has been eaten by the mutant plants." She told them about the 3 desperate criminals who took Boss Gong and Qin Jinqiang into the woods, preparing to kill the 2 little boys. Everyone present, including Chu Xing, nodded and believed that the 3 adults and 2 children would never return. After all, it was a mutant forest, and it was possible that the 3 adults and 2 children had become food for the mutant plants. Chu Xing looked at the rear of the car and asked, "Is Hua Xiaoning in trouble? Does she know what happened?" Zhang Chuchu laughed with contempt and disgust. "He is just a fool. He has been playing with seeds quietly for most of the day. He is indeed a fool. For a normal child, what's so fun about these ugly seeds?" Hua Xiaoning could play with them over and over again for such a long time. If she wasn't a fool, what was she? Everyone burst into laughter. They didn't expect that such powerful people like Hua Mi and Gong Yi would give birth to a fool. Chu Xing walked to the rear of the car, opened the door, and took a look at the little girl inside. Hua Xiaoning was wearing a dirty princess dress, holding a few small seeds in her hands. She blinked her big sparkling eyes and looked up at Chu Xing innocently and cutely. Chu Xing was itching to bite the bullet. Hua Xiaoning looked so much like that witch Hua Mi, but he couldn't strangle this kid to death with one palm. She was still useful. After checking that Hua Xiaoning was indeed herself, Chu Xing turned around and winked at Zhang Chuchu's ex-boyfriend. The ex-boyfriend walked over, patted Zhang Chuchu's shoulder, put his arm around Zhang Chuchu's shoulder, and walked aside. Zhang Chuchu didn't understand why. She didn't want to move. She just tilted her head and asked Chu Xing, "You promised me that you would give me the crystal core after I finish this matter." As long as Chu Xing can fulfill his promise, Zhang Chuchu can get these crystal cores and run away. Chu Xing nodded to Zhang Chuchu's ex-boyfriend. "He will give it to you." Zhang Chuchu finally felt relieved, and her ex-boyfriend carried her arm around his shoulder and walked to a remote place. Zhang Chuchu is very relieved about this ex-boyfriend. After all, when Zhang Chuchu dumped him, his ex-boyfriend cried and begged for her back for a long time, but he failed to win back Zhang Chuchu's heart. Now, Zhang Chuchu is very regretful. If she had known that the end of the world would come and her ex-boyfriend was with Chu Xing, a promising group leader, she would not have broken up with her ex-boyfriend. She thought her ex-boyfriend took her to a strange and remote place to get back together with her, so Zhang Chuchu was quite arrogant. She crossed her arms and looked at her ex-boyfriend with disdain and disgust. "If you have anything to say, just say it quickly. Give me the crystal core. Don't come to me for this kind of thing in the future. It's very risky. I'm really risking my life to help you. I'm telling you, you tell your team leader to double the price of the crystal core he gives me, otherwise why are you doing this?" Zhang Chuchu couldn't believe it. Didn't her ex-boyfriend like her very much? But what was he doing now? she actually stab her. No, he wanted to kill her. At this time, Zhang Chuchu finally confirmed that her ex-boyfriend really wanted her life and he wanted her to die. Why? Zhang Chuchu asked this question with great difficulty, spitting blood from her mouth. When they broke up, the ex-boyfriend was so affectionate, and now he is so cruel. No matter how hard Zhang Chuchu tried, she couldn't understand why he wanted to kill her. Because killing you in the end is also part of the leader's plan. The ex-boyfriend took a knife and stirred it in Zhang Chuchu's heart, then pulled the knife out. He made sure that Zhang Chuchu had died, then reached out to close Zhang Chuchu's eyes, and finally burned Zhang Chuchu's body into charcoal. After doing all these things, the ex-boyfriend returned to Chu Xiang and said, "Captain, everything has been handled cleanly. I am the one who saved you." Hua Xiaoning held the seeds in her hand and looked up at Chu Xiang. Chu Xiang taught her, "Let me ask you, who am I?" Hua Xiaoning didn't say anything. Of course she knew who this man was. Wasn't he the man who was the mastermind behind Zhang Chuchu bringing her out? She looked at Chu Xiang with pity in her eyes. In the mutant forest, Boss Gong pulled Qin Jinxiang to hide on a tall tree and watched everything that happened under the tree. Qin Jinxiang asked doubtfully, "Boss, won't we be discovered like this?" The two of them are now right above Chu Xiang and his group. Boss Gong whispered, "It doesn't matter. They don't dare to enter the dense forest easily." Sometimes Boss Gong thinks these adults are a little ridiculous. They thought they understood the whole picture of the world, but they didn't know that everything they saw before their eyes was what Hua Xiaoning wanted them to see. Including Chu Xiang, he thought Hua Xiaoning was a real fool who couldn't even speak, but Hua Xiaoning just didn't want to be as stupid as Chu Xiang and spoke word by word following Chu Xiang. After teaching Hua Xiaoning several times, Chu Xiang had completely given up the idea of communicating with Hua Xiaoning. He did not threaten or intimidate Hua Xiaoning because such means would be useless for a fool. Hua Xiaoning can't even speak. What's the point of intimidating and threatening her? So Chu Xiang took out a lollipop and handed it to Hua Xiaoning. "Take it. Follow me to my safe zone and stay there for a few days." Hua Xiaoning glanced at the lollipop that Chu Xiang stuffed into her hand. This kind of lollipop was very cheap. Her mother never let her and her brother eat too much of it, because it would rot their teeth. Moreover, the lollipops that my mother took out every time were packaged better than Chu Shiheng's lollipops, and they didn't look as plastic. She continued to lower her head and play with the flower seeds in her hand. For Hua Xiaoning, the flower seeds were much more interesting to her than Chu Shiheng's lollipops. Qin Jinxiang, who was standing on the tree, watched the car that Hua Xiaoning was in being driven away. He anxiously asked Boss Gong, "What should we do if our sister is taken away? Will she be in any danger?" Boss Gong rolled his eyes at Qin Jinxiang and said, "Even if you are in danger, my sister won't be. Don't worry, we will follow." Qin Jinxiang followed behind Boss Gong and climbed down from the tree happily. However, the two of them stood in an empty spot, with only a charred corpse left. Qin Jinxiang asked Gong Lauda in embarrassment, "How can we catch up with my sister now?" Boss Gong was a little depressed. If he had known this would happen, he should have told Hua Xiaoning to leave one person alive to drive for their two children. "Let's walk first. If we meet a car on the road, we can let it take us there." The two children walked with great difficulty to the safe area where Chu Xiang was. It is said that it is a safe zone, but in fact it has become Chu Shiheng's private territory, and this private territory is built near the large safe zone. His territory and Captain Zhao's territory are currently the two largest team gathering places outside the large security zone. After Chu Shiheng's deliberate operation, and the fact that Chu Shiheng's supernatural powers are much stronger than Captain Zhao's, Chu Shiheng's power is much stronger than Captain Zhao's. As soon as Hua Xiaoning was brought to Chu Shiheng's territory, someone came and brought her food. She refused to come out from the back of the car, and Chu Xiang didn't force her. After all, she was just a fool, and if she was kept in the trunk of the car, this little fool wouldn't run around. As long as she was given food, Hua Xiaoning didn't mind staying in there for a few days. Zhang Chuchu's ex-boyfriend came over and asked Chu Xiang, "Captain, what should we do next?" Now the people who kidnapped Hua Xiaoning have been killed by Chu Xing, and Hua Xiaoning has also been taken to their territory by Chu Xing. So, what should they do next? Everyone was a little confused. According to common sense, shouldn't they take Hua Xiaoning back to Xiangqing base to claim credit after finding her? Chu Xing reached out his hand to call his teammates over. He said to Zhang Chuchu's ex-boyfriend, "All we can do now is wait for Gong Yi and Huami in Xiangqing base to find out that their child is missing. After that, they will definitely look for her everywhere. After they get anxious for a few days, I will give them clues. If they know that I saved their only daughter, won't they be grateful to me?" Yes, this is Chu Shiheng's entire plan. He is now tired of staying outside and wants to go into the Xiangqing base to expand his influence.
Que Xiang dise d'un ordinaris né à qui méthodes.
If he wants to enter the Xiangqing base, he must let Huami and Gong Yi invite him in like a god. Now one of Huami and Gong Yi's 2 children has died, leaving only Hua Xiaoning. Why don't they be more warm and polite to Hua Xiaoning's savior? When Chu Xing enters the Xiangqing base from now on, Huami and Gong Yi will regard Chu Xing as the benefactor in Hua Xiaoning's life. Anyway, Hua Xiaoning is a fool. As long as Chu Xing can stay by Hua Xiaoning's side, he will have many opportunities to manipulate this little girl. When Hua Xiaoning grows up, Chu Xing will find a suitable young man who is easy to control and let this young man pretend to fall in love with Hua Xiaoning and marry the little fool. Huami and Gong Yi could not object. So in the end, Huami and Gong Yi's Xiangqing base will sooner or later belong to this young man. During this process, Chu Xing will infiltrate his people into the management level of Xiangqing base little by little. Chu Shiheng's plan was designed very carefully, and the time span of the layout was more than 10 years. But it is much safer than the previous plan of arranging those children to get close to Hua Xiaoning. Zhang Chuchu's ex-boyfriend gave Chu Xing a thumbs up and said, "Great. Captain, you are better." Chu Xing patted his ex-boyfriend on the shoulder and said, "You work hard. After you enter Xiangqing base, I will arrange you into the management level of Xiangqing base. No matter what position it is, you must occupy this position first. Don't worry, Captain. Leave everything to me. I promise to give you a deep position in the management of Xiangqing base." My ex-boyfriend is also a talented person. Not only is he good-looking, but he has also developed a ruthless character over the past few years in the apocalypse. He felt that with his talents, it would not be difficult for him to get into the upper echelons of Xiangqing base. The main thing is to have a way to get in. Chu Shiheng's team was all excited and silently waiting for the Xiangqing base to start earthquake. Their wealth and glory will come soon. Qin Jin soon received the news that 3 children, Qin Jinxiang from her family and Huami's brother and sister, were taken away from Xiangqing. Zhang Chuchu's identity was easily discovered. While the people in the Xiangqing base were still busy preparing to go out of the city to carry out missions and were feeling fortunate that they had moved into the Xiangqing base in advance, there were cameras everywhere in the Xiangqing base. Zhang Chuchu thought that it would be a very difficult task for Yang Honglin to find her. In fact, Yang Honglin knew after looking at the surveillance video at the door of Huami's house that it was Zhang Chuchu who took the 3 children away. When Qin Jun hurriedly found Huami and Gong Yi, they were still in the mutant forest, stationed there and setting up a field command post, and specially recruited some experts to study the mutant plants. Seeing Qin Jun and Yang Honglin walk into the command center with serious faces and explain the situation, Huami and Gong Yi couldn't help laughing. "What are you laughing at? The 3 children have been taken away by Zhang Chuchu. Who knows what she will do to them? Oh my God. I am almost dying of anxiety. Stop laughing, both of you." Huami waved her hand. "It's okay. Our brother is the 2nd oldest among the kids. No one dares to call him the eldest." Qin Jin thought Huami didn't quite understand the seriousness of the problem. But now Zhang Chuchu is an adult. She obviously had a plan and was conscious to trick the 3 children out. The 3 children are safe in the Xiangqing base, but who can guarantee what will happen to them after they leave the Xiangqing base? This matter is not a joke. I am very worried about their safety. What is there to worry about? What you should be worried about is the safety of Zhang Chuchu and the 3 men. Don't worry, just follow the path they took when they left Xiangqing and you will be able to find the bodies of Zhang Chuchu and the others. After Huami finished speaking, she turned around and continued to study the piece of mutant plant in front of them with Gong Yi. Before, this piece of mutant plant had been attacking the garrison, but suddenly it turned into an ordinary piece of dry vine, completely destroying the thousands of garrisons in the Xiangqing base. Seeing how bold the couple was, Qin Zhen had no choice but to turn back with Yang Honglin and investigate the whereabouts of the car driven by Zhang Chuchu. They investigated along the way and finally found Zhang Chuchu's body, which had been burned to charcoal. The two of them brought Zhang Chuchu's burnt body and came to Huami and Gong Yi again. Gong Yi's eyes became slightly more serious, and he seemed to take the matter a little more seriously. Zhang Chuchu is dead, and the 3 children were not found?
Yang Honglin nodded.
According to the footprints at the scene, it should be the adult men that Zhang Chuchu found who took my brother and Qin Jianxiang into the mutant forest. Another group of people came and burned Zhang Chuchu and took Zhang Chuchu's car and sister away alone. Yang Honglin looked serious and showed Huami the on-site investigation report. Gong Yi's expression changed completely now. His daughter was separated from Boss Gong. You mean that brother and Qin Jianxiang were taken to the mutant forest by that group of people, and those adult men did not come out of the mutant forest, but brother and Qin Jianxiang did? Huami was flipping through the report in her hand, and a flash of inspiration seemed to come to her mind, but it was so fleeting that she didn't catch it. She seemed to have overlooked something and looked at Yang Honglin with full of questions, hoping that Yang Honglin could give her an answer.
Yang Honglin nodded.
According to our footprint experts' analysis, my brother and Qin Jianxiang left the forest and followed my sister and the group's car. Now, we don't know where the 2 children are. Our people have already tracked them down. Yang Honglin paused as he spoke. The phone in his hand rang, so he turned around to answer it. Yeah, I got it. Okay, I'll hang up. Yang Honglin hung up the phone, turned around and said to Huami and Gong Yi, I found my brother and Qin Jianxiang. The 2 children walked all the way and couldn't get a car. They squatted on the side of the road and fell asleep out of exhaustion. Upon hearing the news, Huami was both angry and wanted to laugh. These 2 children are just a few years old, although the IQ of children nowadays has greatly improved compared to children in the past. But what they did was still childish and had a kind of stupidity that made adults feel lonely and brave when they thought about it. We have to find my daughter as soon as possible. She has no protection now. Gong Yi had a worried look on his face, but he was not worried about his son. After all, his son had a high level of mental power and a sharp mind, and he would not let himself suffer any loss outside. But my daughter has no ability to protect herself, and she will only be bullied if she goes out. At first, Gong Yi thought Hua Xiaoning was with her brother, so Gong Yi was not worried. Now that he knew Hua Xiaoning was separated from her brother, it meant that she had lost the armor that could protect her and could be hurt at any time and anywhere by this man-eating doomsday. I'll go pick up the eldest 2 children first. Don't worry, none of them will be lost. Huami comforted Gong Yi and followed Yang Honglin out of the command center. Qin Zhen hurriedly followed Huami, and the 3 of them got in a car and headed in the direction indicated by Yang Honglin's men. When Huami and Qin Zhen arrived, the 2 dirty children, brother and Qin Jianxiang, had already fallen asleep in the arms of the police. Qin Zhen walked forward and picked up Qin Jianxiang, who was covered in mud. He was so angry that he slapped Qin Jianxiang's ace several times, but failed to wake up the tough kid. She was angry and helpless. Huami frowned and asked Gong Laodao, who was in her arms, "Why don't you just rescue your sister? Aren't you worried that something might happen to your sister?" She had previously told Boss Gong that if her sister encountered any difficulties, he should not intervene, but let her find a way to solve it herself. But now the situation is too complicated. So many strangers took my sister away. Why didn't Boss Gong stop my sister when he obviously had the ability to get out of the mutant forest? As a brother, doesn't he worry about his sister at all? Boss Gong frowned and was unwilling to tell the truth. Huami felt a little strange. She stroked Boss Gong's soft short hair and asked, "Tell Mom the truth. What are you, your sister, and Qin Jianxiang doing? Are you hiding something from Mom and Dad?" She finally realized something was wrong. With Boss Gong's ability, he was almost invincible inside and outside the Xiangqing base. Boss Gong didn't know who the group of people who took his sister away were. Strangers equals danger. This is what Huami and Gong Yi have been teaching their children through practical actions. Gong Yi often taught Gong Laoda to take good care of his sister when he was away from home, but Gong Laoda left his sister with a group of strangers. That's not all. Boss Gong and his two children, Qin Jianxiang, followed the group of people. Is Boss Gong absolutely sure that his sister has the ability to protect herself and can deal with that group of men? So, his sister has the ability to protect herself? Looking at Boss Gong, who refused to say anything, Huami felt a little headache. She pulled a branch and pointed at Boss Gong's ace. Are you going to tell the truth or not? What are you two siblings up to? You're not going to tell me, are you? Boss Gong looked at Huami pitifully. Huami couldn't bear to fight him, so she turned around and called Gong Yi. As it concerns his daughter's safety, Gong Yi is already on his way after completing the firepower deployment in the mutant forest. After listening to Huami's analysis on the phone, he jumped out of the car angrily and strode to his son. Boss Gong could only look at his father with tears in his eyes and still remain stubborn. However, his son's tears had no killing power for Gong Yi. Why are you crying as a man? Tell me the truth. Why did you leave your sister alone to those malicious people? Seeing that Boss Gong still looked pitiful and just kept crying, Gong Yi was really furious. He took the branch from Huami's hand and slapped Boss Gong's ace hard a few times. Will you tell me or not? Will you tell me or not? If you don't, I'll beat your ace into pieces. Boss Gong cried even louder, but he was stubborn and refused to say anything. Qin Jianxiang rushed over and said, hit me, don't hit my brother. Qin Zhen kindly reminded her son, you're older than Gong Ruilin. But Qin Jianxiang didn't care about that. I want to live and die with my elder brother. I will be with him till death. We will be born on the same day and month and die on the same day. Qin Zhen looked at her son with suspicion. People said Hua Xiaoning was a fool, but she didn't think so after watching him for so long. Her son Qin Jianxiang may be the dumbest of the three children. Amidst Boss Gong's crying and Qin Jianxiang's vow to die on the same day of the same month of the same year, Gong Yi was finally helpless. Although Gong Ruilin is young, he is quite stubborn. Gong Yi can only discuss with Huami and get close to Captain Chu's team first. Let's see what Captain Chu means first. Little did they know that just as Gong Yi and Huami were approaching Chu Shiheng's gathering place, Chu Shiheng's teammates came over with a friendly attitude to chat with them. When they heard that they were looking for Hua Xiaoning, Captain Chu's men showed an expression of sudden enlightenment. So the silent little girl is your child. That's really disrespectful. We have been busy trying to find her biological parents these days, and we didn't expect that she is Commander Gong's daughter. The man led Gong Yi and Huami into their gathering place, and Huami saw Chu Shiheng with scars all over his face at a glance. She looked back at Gong Yi, and Gong Yi nodded. He already knew where Hua Xiaoning was, and his daughter was currently doing well and safe. There are just too many vines around. Oh, I didn't expect that I really saved a little princess, hurrah. Chu Shiheng was acting with great surprise, looking like an open-minded, kind, and successful person. Huami and Gong Yi remained calm. In fact, they had already figured out Zhang Chuchu's social relationships clearly. They knew that it was Captain Chu who had been providing funding to Zhang Chuchu. But they still didn't understand what Captain Chu was going to do, so they could only cooperate with Captain Chu in greeting. Finally, Chu Shiheng brought Gong Yi and Huami to Hua Xiaoning. This child is so pitiful. No matter how I coaxed her to come out these days, she wouldn't come out. She didn't say a word. I was so worried. Chu Shiheng pointed at Hua Xiaoning in the trunk of the car and smiled generously. Anyone who saw him like this would think that he was a good person. Huami said words of thanks, but she was very sensitive to those psychics in Chu Shiheng's team. There were barely visible sneers in their eyes. It was like watching a joke about Huami and Gong Yi. So what if he was successful, had great powers, and had an unattainable status? With such a foolish child, and now there was only this child left, who would Huami and Gong Yi leave all the wealth they had earned in the future? Isn't it going to be left to their future son-in-law? Gong Yi was angry in his heart, but he pretended to be very nice on the surface and expressed his gratitude to Chu Xiang. Then the two of them were ready to leave with the child in their arms. Seeing that the two of them did not seem as distraught as he had imagined, Chu Xiang was filled with gratitude and hurriedly stopped Gong Yi and Huami. It's getting late. I've been with Xiaoning for a few days, and I'm reluctant to leave her. Why don't we leave tomorrow morning? Seeing that Gong Yi and Huami were silent, Chu Xiang started with the child again. He looked at Hua Xiaoning and asked with a pleasant expression, Xiaoning, are you willing to leave your uncle? Are you afraid if the bad guys catch you and your brother? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Your uncle will protect you in everything, okay? As if he did it on purpose. Chu Xiang held Boss Gong in his arms while reaching out to hug Hua Xiaoning, trying to create the feeling that he and Hua Xiaoning were very close. However, Gong Yi let go of her hand and did not allow anyone else to touch her daughter.